And welcome back. Now, I know you expect a lot from the Supreme Court today. Today is day 2, and Ruto's lawyers will have their time before the seven judges of the Supreme Court to defend what was submitted yesterday by the lawyers there. We had got Philip Murgor, James Orengo, Paul Nyamodi, we had got Willis Otieno, Kiom Tata, and other lawyers who represented the petitioners. In the studio, I have got Advocate of the High Court, Eliud Ngugi, who is here to help us make sense of what happened yesterday and perhaps what you should expect today and the coming days. Okay, good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy new month.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's a new month, by the way. We should expect much moving forward as a nation.
Yes, we expect so much. If, for example, the Supreme Court upholds, we expect that there will be a public holiday this month.
Yes, chances are, yes.
Yes.
Let's start from a different angle. The president appeared yesterday for the first time in 3 weeks.
Yes.
And he appeared, he was in, in casual. We all know how Mombasa is, of course, in his long-sleeved and, checked shirt, in some jeans there and white sport shoes. And it all seemed that he was just it was a happy mood.
Yes, he seemed to be very happy. And I think they were coming from a hotel called Barca.
Yes, to do lunch.
Where they sell biryani.
Exactly.
And I saw a number of politicians right behind him, some even from Nairobi. The likes of women rep-elect, Esther Passaris, was actually there, and I believe Sabina Chege was also there.
Babu
Owino. So it didn't just look like just a random day where the president was down at the coast, but I think there was a meeting. Yes,
there was a meeting actually, because from the sources, he held a meeting with the elected leaders, more so those allied to the Azimio, at the governor's offices, county offices, not even at White State House in Mombasa, State Lodge or State House. He went straight to the county offices where, according to the reports, they didn't expect him, and boom, there he was. He walked in.
I believe they expected him, because my reading of this is that he may have been in Mombasa during the Monday postponed election, mini election that happened in Mombasa. And so they might, all the delegates from the party, from the Azimio party, quite a number of people might have been in Mombasa, and this might have just not been a surprise. They all knew, and probably were there in celebration of the election of a new governor of Mombasa, who happens to be in the ODM party, which is part of Azimio.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also an interesting bit is that he's never spoken about elections. Even the normal press briefing that our reporters used to ask, the grabbed interviews, how was it, how was the process, he didn't do that even after voting. Up to now, he's kept mum.
I believe he has very good reasons, and we also may speculate why he may not have spoken about the election, being the fact that he was supporting a candidate who may not have won or declared yet, and so maybe that's the reason why he has not mentioned anything to do with the election. But also, being a president who is already leaving power, we do not expect him to say much, because maybe he's preparing for his retirement, and we might be shocked that his retirement might be very quiet, whereby he might not be engaging in any political issues in this country. Yeah.
So that was just it. I mean, people can say that you go to Mombasa for holiday, there's nothing serious in Mombasa, so we shouldn't read too much from there.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't. And having in mind that it was a long electioning process, whereby he was also involved in the campaign, moving all over around the country, he definitely needed that break. And we are proud to have a beach and
some fresh air,
some holidaying place in Mombasa where he could actually be resting. Yes.
Let me just vouch, Mr. President, you should go to Rusinga Island, that side of Homa Bay County. Very nice place. Ask me and I will tell you. Okay, a lot happened at the Supreme Court yesterday. we had, a lot of submissions from different lawyers putting their best foot forward to convince the judges on what transpired on 9th of August. What do you think stood out yesterday? Starting with the submissions, what really stood out in terms of the presentation, the demeanor of the judges as compared to 2017?
One of the things that stood out yesterday was that the judges were asking the same questions the public has been asking for a while. And I can recall that one of the judges, Justice Lenaola, actually asked how come, for example, the 4 commissioners who actually had a media briefing only came out to complain about the whole process of election at the 11th hour, which I believe has been a question in the public domain.
Yes.
And so that was one. We had a passionate presentation by one of my friends, Willie Otieno, whereby he got into a song while doing his submissions, and you could see sweat dripping from his face,
yes,
because of how passionate he was in his submission. And so that stood out, and I believe I've seen quite a number of conversation online about that submission by my senior counsel Willis Otieno.
Yeah.
And we also had Omtata doing his submissions and bringing out the numbers and doing the on-screen presentation,
yes,
about the numbers having some differences. So that stood out, and mostly also having the lawyers for Honorable Raila Odinga and Martha Karua bringing out their case on that first day of hearing, basically brought out some of the issues that may have happened. We brought out allegations which we actually expect that the respondents, the IBC, the chairman of IBC, and Honorable William Ruto's lawyers will be able to bring out to respond to today.
Yes.
So we expect that kind of an answer. But they brought up some of the issues which I hope will actually be looked into by the judges. But you could see that the judges were quite firm when they were asking these questions and bringing out these questions.
Yeah.
And this is quite an interesting place to be, where you're able to see that the judges are interrogating some of these submissions. Yes.
Because even in their own wisdom, they also want to understand on behalf of the common mwananchi asking the same questions.
Yes, they want to understand clearly, and they want the advocates who are doing the submissions to bring out some of those issues. They have questions which they want them answered, so that when they retire or they go to actually write that judgment, I believe from Saturday to later in the afternoon on Monday, they'll be able to actually bring out a very concise and well-written judgment. Yes.
And of course, something that also stood out is the presence of the ballot boxes, which were being the scrutiny bit of it. They were going into the details of the forms,
yes,
from different. This is something that never happened even in 2017.
Yes, and this is something which basically will help, because at the end of this process, whereby they are scrutinizing these ballot papers and even going into the ballot boxes, because there's a procedure outlined by the Elections Act whereby you are supposed to put the election material, and they're actually bringing out now, reopening these ballot boxes, and they're able to see what really happened at the polling stations for those 40 or so polling centers which were actually allowed for them to scrutinize. So this is going to help them to actually come up with a report that the judges will be able to rely upon when making their judgment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the areas, not getting into the details, of course. The issue, the big arguments about the numbers, where there was, the petitioners argued that the number who voted moving target, alleged 140,000, uncounted for votes sufficient for runoff. Of course, there was an issue of technology, the process, IEBC divisions. When you look at the process, this again something that was highlighted in 2017. And actually, it was the main reason people went back to the ballot.
Yes.
And again, it surfaced this time around. Not getting into details, the issue of process. It seems to be a hard nut to crack in any electoral cycle in this country.
It is a process, and we are hoping that because the court is fully relying on the Court of Appeal decision of Minor KI, which actually brought out the process of a declaration of results. And it actually says that the results declared at a polling station are final.
Yes.
And so then, what do we comply with the whole process, whereby after we declare, you're supposed to transport materials to the next constituency tallying center. Then from tallying center, you're supposed to take it to the presidential or national tallying center. So this question of the process, how is the process being done? Can it be verified? Is it a simple process? Can it be also a free and fair process? So the court is trying to see whether we have met that threshold, and this is quite important because we are hoping that they are going to actually come up with key principles that we can still follow to make sure that we do not come back to challenge elections, maybe because of maybe technology. So they'll come out and actually express these issues to do with whether it's a PDF, because that came up yesterday.
Yes.
Whether you're supposed to
PDF or JPEG.
JPEG.
Exactly.
When it comes to uploading the form, the form 34As, does it come out as a JPEG or PDF, which is actually something they need to actually give a decision and direction on. So those are some of the issues on the process, and I believe this being the Supreme Court and being the highest court of the land, it's able to make what we call jurisprudence on the process. How should the process be?
Exactly.
Yes.
And even the issue of the division, you know, in the commission, they raised. Actually, it was a question which was given to the lawyers to give their answers during a rejoinder. At what point did the commissioners stop working as a team? You know, because all through they were together. Then all of a sudden now there are some divisions. Perhaps somebody would argue that the divisions in the IEBC would not bring that kind of a good picture in running an election, and even to other commissions in the country, because we have got different commissions in the country. So how do commissions run, basically? Yes.
That's a very interesting question, because one of the advocates tried alluding to or comparing the IBC Commission to the Supreme Court.
That was
having the same number of judges, 7 judges, and the Commission having the same number of commissioners.
Yes.
And he was stopped right there, because there is how the Commission runs separately from how the Supreme Court basically runs.
Yes, because the rules and of structure and of the two bodies are different.
They are all different, and so this is quite something that needs to come out on how basically commissions run. There was an issue that was brought out by my senior Paul Nyamodi on the issue on the commission in itself, and on the gazettement of the presiding officer, presidential presiding returning officer.
Yes.
And that's quite an issue that actually the judges and even the lawyers for the other side are expected to actually answer, because the gazettement was basically backed by an act or by the laws in place. So when the chairman of the commission went ahead and gazetted that he's a returning officer, then the question on whether he relied on the right sections of the law comes up.
Yeah.
And so we hope that that will also be determined on the whole, on whether the chairman of the commission is also the returning officer, the national returning officer.
Because then how should it be? I think that's a question that the judge, the Ruto's lawyers will respond to, on who should declare the final result. Because there's something I also I got interesting: result and results. And I think that was expressed by Willis Otieno.
Yes.
Result and results. I think for some minute I was in law school, but I said no, let me just stick to my lane.
There's a whole interpretation.
Yes.
Interpretation of words, and where, and for example, the plural and the singular just makes a whole difference in law. And that's what basically I believe the lawyers are here to bring out, and the judges are here to determine whether a singular term can also be interpreted as a plural term. So result and results can also be
are completely different.
Yes.
Let's talk about the issue of the ballot boxes which were brought there. I don't know whether it was just a cross-section of the ballot boxes from different counties, different polling stations across the country, or it was just meant to bring a picture of what happened. But really, when there's that bit of removing the ballot papers from the box, recounting them and doing the scrutiny and giving the final report, one would argue that what happened across other constituencies across the country. Can Kenyans now go back and say, if only those ballot boxes were brought to the Supreme Court, now we can easily say we can bring a blanket judgment that everything was a sham?
These were, first of all, the 45 ballot boxes which have been taken for scrutiny are actually from all over. Yes. There are samples from the different corners of this country. There are some ballot boxes from Nandi County. There are some from Mombasa County. There are others from, I believe, Kirinyaga area, Central Province. And so this is supposed to bring out, to give a sample of what basically happened all over the country. And this should be able to actually portray the picture of the electioning process and the voting process, and how the filling of these ballot boxes and the tallying went on. And so we should be able to be comfortable and to know and to see from this sampling that the process was, whether the process was properly done or not. Yes.
Let's talk about the importance of Form 34A, because that's where it all begins. Because in all those ballot boxes, I beg your pardon, Form 34A would translate to Form 34B, then it goes on and on and on and on until you get the final form at the National Tallying Center. How important is this Form 34A at the initial stage?
The Form 34A is very important. From the 2017 case, and also from a minor Kai case, Court of Appeal case, what this gave, the power given to Forms 34A was that these are the final results. And that the declaration at the polling center, whereby they actually collect from the different streams. So you find a center has, let's say, 4 or 5 streams. And we collect, and then the Form 34A is basically one that says that in this polling center, in this area, this is what the results are.
Yes.
We declare the president from that point, and they're expected to now upload this and send it to the National Tallying Center using send it to the National Tallying Center. So this is quite an important form, because that's the final result. So what happens after that is that they transport and take the 34A from the polling center and take it to the constituency polling center, whereby, again, they now fill the 34B. So the 34B is from the different polling center, let's say in, for example, in Nairobi. So they will take, the 34B is actually the one form portraying the different, let's say, words around Nairobi, which I believe are 14 or 16, thereabout. So they take those 34As and reduce them into this one form called 34B, showing the presidential vote.
Yes.
And so it doesn't change much, because the key form that will be looked at the National Tallying Center because now at the constituency tallying center, they take the 34B, and again, after they fill, we transport it again to the National Tallying Center, which in this case was Bomas of Kenya. And now at the Bomas of Kenya, they will take, for example, all the constituency results or the 34Bs and reduce them to 34C. But now the 34C, before it's actually finalized, it has to be tallied together with the 34As from all over.
Right.
So they have to verify whether the numbers appearing on 34As are actually similar to the 34Bs, and then I'll conclude by filling the 34C, which basically is shows the leading presidential candidate. And so the 34A is quite important, because that's the one that is transported, or rather not even transmitted through the system in itself. So the results at the polling center become final because they go to the National Tallying Center.
So that is this where the question of JPEG or PDF?
Yes, this is where the question of JPEG and PDF comes in, because there are questions about someone intercepting the 34A from the polling center and changing the numbers, then again sending the same. And this was a question, that's a question that was asked by Justice William Ouko, formerly the president of the Court of Appeal. He was asking if then you're able to intercept the 34A and someone else is transporting and the forms tend to be different. Help me clarify on this issue. How are you able to get different forms, yet one was transported by road and the other one was transported through the system? So he was seeking clarification on whether there could be a way whereby one is able to actually intercept the transmission of 34As. Which is something that will come out.
You know, one again, there's that report of the audit report by KPMG, and you know, it was alleged that the numbers were not okay in some areas, and IBC did not take note of the report from KPMG. Then the question someone would argue is, at what point should we now take the report from KPMG, take it to the IBC, and reflect the national numbers that will reflect at the ballot papers, or the number of voters who, okay, let me make it simple. We have the report from KPMG, IBC got their numbers, and then we are going to election. So which numbers do we use? From KPMG or the one that IBC has?
That's a question that needs to be clarified, but I believe the numbers which should be used is the commissions, because the commissions already did is a mandated body to conduct an election. But again, it's a clarification that maybe we shouldn't get into the details of it, and we expect to see the feedback from the respondent today, because they are going to come back today and actually paint or give us their story. Give us their story about, or their response basically, but in simple terms, their story on how the electioning process took place, and whether whatever allegations that have been made by the petitioners are true or not. So they're going to come back and give us their side of the story. And today is quite an important day to actually follow through the proceedings, because yesterday we may have had the submissions from the petitioners, and we may have raised questions, and if the respondent are not able to answer some of these questions which were raised yesterday, then it basically means that probably we uphold those questions, or they actually are raising very important issues which now the Supreme Court will be able to use to determine whether the election was properly done.
We should expect a heated day today at the Supreme Court. Of course, the respondents will have their time to be heard. What else should we expect?
We would expect that the lawyers are going to do their best. The respondents' lawyers are going to do their best. And in this case, I'm thinking about the former Attorney General, who is actually part of the team of the respondents or leading the IBC lawyers. So I expect him to bring out his expertise and to note Honorable, or rather Senior Counsel Givo Muigai is a professor who has actually represented IBC before, who has actually taken part in these processes before. And so we expect that he's going to be able to come out and do his submissions in his usual poetic way, in a very clear way, to actually respond to some of those issues which were raised yesterday. We also expect that the judges will still ask those hard questions to the lawyers of the respondents.
Were they hard? The questions seemed so simple.
I don't think they were simple, because
from a layman's point of view, someone would argue that that question sounds so simple, but hey, be careful.
Well, we expect them to ask both simple and hard questions, but mostly even the hard questions, to also be able to guide these respondents' lawyers to come out and actually, for example, answer some of these questions about the commission, which has been alleged to have been divided. So we expect to hear what they have to say about that commission. And the mere fact that we have lawyers from the IBC coming in to represent IBC, and the individual lawyers who are representing the individual respondents are also expected to come in. It's quite going to be interesting, because if the two sets of lawyers are going to represent the different parties, we expect to see whether they are going to have a similar response or it's going to differ. I
was a bit particular in terms of time management. Everybody was given an equal opportunity to present their case. And perhaps from the legal aspect, what is time? What does it mean? Anytime you are given time, Ngugi, you have got 2 minutes.
Time is quite important, because one, you're expected to compress your submissions or your presentation to the judges. Compress it in a way that you're able to clarify everything in a limited amount of time. So, one, you need to be so good at issuing your points, responding, for example, to the issues which were raised by the Chief Justice at the beginning, during pre-trial on Monday, or rather on Tuesday. You need to be able to respond to those issues, while at the same time having the various questions which were asked yesterday and were raised by the petitioners. You need also to respond to them. So it's a very tricky situation whereby your submissions should be able to be comprehensive, and at the same time should be able to answer all these issues which have been raised. And at the same time, you should give your best. And there's the whole analogy whereby you should be able to clearly present your points. And different ways of presenting these points sometimes may be through poetry, for example, or song, like we saw with Wakili Willie Sotieno. And so how do you make sure?
There's a song already. A DJ has done a song about that. I'll look for it and play it here. There's a song already out for that.
So you need to make sure that as you do your presentation, you enhance all these things and still adhere to the timeline given to you. Because the judges are likely to stop you. And by the time they're stopping you, you need to have finished expressing your issues.
You know, as lawyers, again, when you look at the whole process, when it was done, when it all started, until now where we are, somebody would argue that there is that sense of time, limited time, which was also raised yesterday, that the time that was allocated for hearing of a presidential petition is rather short. But then lawyers, the Supreme Court is also time-bound that they must deliver based on what they have. I'm trying to argue my case as well. What if the petitioners and the respondents do not have an equal opportunity of time? For example, you have got 3 hours, and when you come, you request for more time from the courts. What would happen now from the petitioner who had already submitted their side of the story?
We're given a chance to come back and do what they're calling a rejoinder, which will happen tomorrow. So yesterday they raised their issues.
Yes.
Today the respondents or the IBC lawyers and Honorable William Ruto's lawyers and Chebukati's lawyers are going to respond to these issues, and they may come in and punch holes and create scenarios which actually now the petitioners' lawyers tomorrow, although limited, they will need to come and clarify some of those issues to seal those holes which are going to be punched and created today. And so the process in itself just allows them to, it may not be equal time, but there's a right to be heard for every party, and for you to come back and do a rejoinder or come and actually seal the holes which may have been, which will be created today by the IBC, Chebukati, and Honorable William Ruto's lawyers.
I'm told we are going for a break, but before then, do you really think Kenyans are getting, value from the Supreme Court? Because this happened in 2013, 2017, and now 2022.
Yes. One of the values that Kenyans are getting is this clarification of this whole process. Number two, the other thing that is coming out from the Supreme Court is just having the finality on the dispute resolution, whereby if you feel that you're not happy with the results, then you're given a chance to actually have that heard in a court of law. So Kenyans are getting that value, because what options would we have had if we did not have a Supreme Court? Whereby I feel that the process was not properly done. And so the Supreme Court has become that place whereby we are able to determine and answer issues of elections, presidential elections, in finality. And therefore, after that, we expect that the decision will be taken by both parties, and they are going to accept the decision of the Supreme Court. And so it's a good place. We are getting that kind of value from the Supreme Court. We are also getting the other thing called just the other thing being the fact that the Supreme Court is able to create jurisprudence, is able to create a way on the future issues which may come up, and create a solution for them. So the Supreme Court is quite important in this case. And so I expect by the year maybe 2040 something, whereby we are going to have many other elections, that the process is going to be smoother. The process is not going to be marred by irregularities, because the Supreme Court will have already set a way and direction on how to deal with some of these irregularities. And so if, for example, the voter turnout is X, by the year maybe 2040 something, we'll be able to know what do we do if the voter turnout is at this number. So it will set out a way. And so that's the beauty of having the Supreme Court.
Let's take a break, but when we come back, you'll start with this question: is going to the Supreme Court after every general election a blessing in disguise or a curse to the growth of a democracy in our country? Should Kenyans embrace it in terms of developing governance and democracy in our country? And whichever way it goes, how should Kenyans receive or handle the cases at the Supreme Court? When we come back, let's take a break, and when we come back, we're still having this. And remember, in a few minutes, we'll also be joining our colleagues at the Supreme Court, that is Ben Chumba and Sarafina, to give us an update, and later on head to the Supreme Court at 9 a.m. Let's take a break. We'll be back. Welcome back. And just before we head straight to the Supreme Court, where the real action will begin, with Wakili Eliud Ngugi here, just trying to make sense of what really happens at the Supreme Court and what you should expect today, tomorrow, and in the coming days. 5th of September should be the D-Day when we'll have the final ruling from the landed judges. Okay, so before we went on a break, I asked you a question: how should Kenyans treat these issues, the process of going to the Supreme Court? For the third time, there's a petition to the Supreme Court challenging a presidential election. So how should Kenyans treat it? Is it a blessing in disguise in terms of strengthening governance and democracy in our country?
It's two ways. It's actually a blessing in this one way, that we are able to take our disputes to a body, and this body is able to determine whether the process has been done in a fair manner. And so it's a blessing in that way, because you have a chance whereby if you have very correct evidence, if you have enough evidence,
yes,
you are able to actually raise your issue somewhere, and you're given a second chance. So that's one of the blessings. But then maybe why I would think it's not a blessing is because sometimes we may be delaying this justice to the people who actually showed up on the voting day, and they actually went ahead. For example, I presume in the near future, whereby Kenyans will have an 80% or 70% turnout. They may go out there and vote. Out of, for example, now this year where we had 22 million people turning up to vote, or rather who are registered to vote, and only 14 million and something showed up. I perceive a situation whereby in the near future we may have, let's say, 18 million people whose voice would want to be heard, yet the number 2 person decides to challenge this election, and once they challenge it, they'll be holding the 18 million Kenyans who may have elected a party to become a president. They'll be holding him hostage, and this process may become a hindrance to justice maybe for those people. But the blessing may carry so much weight because we have a place to go to. And number 2, when it comes to democracy in our country, this process is creating public rules which we can be able to refer to in the near future. It's actually answering questions which have been there for us as Kenyans to be able to answer on what may not be foreseen in the near future. So like one of the examples that I note in the process of electioning, what happens if the chairman of the commission does not turn up at that last minute? That's a gap that actually may need to be clarified when it comes to that. Or like what happened this year, what happens when the commission is divided? And so we use this example of these struggles that we are having as a growing democracy to be able to determine the future of which actually contributes to the democracy of this country. So in the near future, probably in the next election in 2027, we are likely to be able to have an answer whereby, for example, let's say the commissioners are not in agreement, or rather the question which is currently at the Supreme Court is the issue on the questions to do with whether how is the tallying process done and how is the verification process done. So the Supreme Court is now answering that question, and so in the near future we will not have to ask that question. We'll just refer to 2022 decision by the Supreme Court, and we'll be able to know the role of the commission. Do they all have the same role? How do they have procedure? Maybe they may even go out and recommend that we create regulation on the duty of each commissioner's job. So it's quite a good process. The Supreme Court is actually a good place to actually create, number 1, laws. Number 2, it creates what we call jurisprudence, which basically is a case that can be binding to the other lower courts. So if today the governors in the different places who are unhappy with the whole process go to court, and I know there are some places where the governors have said that they are going to challenge the election, the decision that will be made on Monday by the Supreme Court will be binding to the high courts in these areas, and they'll be able, as a point of reference, and they'll be able to actually direct maybe and answer some of these questions that these governors are going to be raising in their petitions. Yeah.
Okay, so as we come to a close, what should we expect today? Moving, of course, today is the Ruto's lawyers to defend what was submitted yesterday. So basically, what should we expect?
We should expect that the lawyers are going to answer the questions which were raised yesterday. They are going. The IBC lawyers are also able to answer, for example, the question on the 140 votes which was raised yesterday as well, and we should also be able to also hear what they have to say about the role of the chairperson of the commission. They're going to answer to that, and we're going to also have even the issue of the commission, their answer on what they think the role of the different commissioners is, and whether the chairman of the IBC commission came up with some rules to make himself the returning officer, the national returning officer. So they will be able to come back and answer these questions today, and maybe even tell us whether, in their view, the election was free, fair, and verifiable in their view and in your take.
Okay.
So they'll be able to come out and actually, since the IBC may be actually the people who have the material and have been able to swear affidavits on the process, they will be able to also tell us whether the process was intercepted, the process of transmitting the Form 34As was intercepted, and why they think maybe that the case raised by the petitioner maybe does not hold water.
All right. Okay. Just give your final remarks in under one minute.
Well, I applaud the Supreme Court and our Kenyan people who have actually remained calm, and some of the leaders who have said they will respect the decision of the Supreme Court. And so as we await the decision of the Supreme Court come Monday afternoon or Monday evening, I hope that we'll maintain our peace, and that again the Supreme Court is going to create laws which are going to guide us as a country. And so we look forward to a very calm country. We look forward to our leaders respecting the decision of the Supreme Court, and whichever direction the Supreme Court rules, that life will move on. And we'll move on with our lives.
Okay, a quick one. The petitioners raised their concern yesterday, and today is another set of lawyers defending the respondent. So what happens tomorrow then?
What happens tomorrow is that the petitioners will have a right to come and respond to some of the issues which will be raised today by the respondents' lawyers.
Yes.
And so what we expect is for them to come and be able to seal some of the loopholes.
The so-called rejoinder?
Yeah, rejoinder.
Right.
They'll be able to come back and actually seal those holes which will be punched today by the IBC and President-elect William Ruto's lawyers. Yes.
Okay. And then now the judges will retire. Let me ask you, when they retire to make their judgment, do they sit in the same room? I don't know whether you are privy to this. Do they sit in the same room doing, like in a courtroom, or everybody will have their own space somewhere?
I actually had that conversation with one of my colleagues.
Yeah, what happened? Because at the end of the day, they will have to come with their different judgments.
What the conclusion was, because we are not privy to this information, is that they basically sit together and agree on the decision. We already have the assistants already typing out and probably doing the write-up already as the proceedings are going on, and we also have a court process being recorded. And so for the judges, they will actually meet together as the 7 of them, and they'll be able to actually agree. Then they're going to invite one of their assistants to come and brief them on their decision. And this assistant is able to actually now coordinate the writing of their whole judgment. Yes.
Okay. Those are live pictures from the Supreme Court of Kenya, where the action is almost about to begin. We've seen how time is of the essence. CJ Martha Koome says it's 9. They give it plus or minus, which is okay, around 2-3 minutes, and they begin. And we've seen them that if your time is over, your mic automatically switches off. So I think that is something for us, even for us, we should buy and carry along with us even in our normal lives. So those are live pictures from the Supreme Court. I really wonder, Wakili, how intense it can get when your mic is on and you have got 15 minutes to submit and the judges are waiting for you to talk. The whole hall is pin drop quiet. What goes on? Do you feel some weakness on your knees?
I was in that courtroom on Monday. And
what's the mood like?
And it's actually very intimidating because the judges are able to say proceed, or they can tell you on that day. They actually told 2 of my colleagues to actually sit down.
Yes.
We need to make a ruling. And so it's quite intimidating. Secondly, you have the best of the best lawyers in that room. You have the senior counsels, which basically means that these are advocates who have practiced laws for over 50 years. Some of them, like senior counsel Paul Muite and
Roger, right? Likes of Ngatia, for example.
They have actually practiced law, and so and gentlemen senior counsels like Gibu Muigai and Kioko Kilukumi and Morgo, who have actually done this for many years. And so if they turn and look at you, they are able to actually even themselves intimidate you. And so if you are not
But that's the rule
prepared,
of the game anyway.
If you're not prepared to actually make your presentation, then you're going to stammer and you're going to become incoherent and not able to express yourself. And so it's a very, you actually feel the power in the room. When you're actually in that room, you feel that power, whereby, first of all, the judges are sitting above you.
Good.
So they are looking down on you and you're looking up at them. And so that in itself just becomes, and then you have cameras around you and you have the whole nation listening to you. So it's not an easy task to undertake.
Anyway, I think that's why I'm in the correct profession. I'm here because this is what I do. This is it. Finally, and again, some light moments we see in the courtrooms. I mean, it's never that serious, right?
It's never that serious, but also sometimes it's quite serious because, one, the judges, remember, have power to actually cite, we call it cite you for contempt, or say that you are actually dishonoring the courtroom or dishonoring the judges. And they have power to actually put you in a cell. If, for example, you went in there and said irregular things or things which are not correct, or maybe even insulted them, they actually have the power to actually order the police to actually put you inside and punish you. So there's a light moment, which actually I believe allows you to ease up. So sometimes they're able to read and see that you're very tense, and so they may make a joke at you to just make you feel calm and find and actually settle down. But then this basically allows you to settle down when they actually make that light moment. Sometimes they may make the light moment, but maybe they are being sarcastic. So it's quite... you
have to read their minds as well.
You need to read their minds, but also you need to remember that you're there to work.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, it's 2 minutes to top of the hour, and as you can see on the top of, right in front of your screen there, those are live images and a clear indication that the judges are almost walking into the courtroom, and any minute from now we'll be having that live proceeding. Wakili, thank you so much for coming through. That is Wakili Eliud Ngugi, who is an advocate of the High Court. Meanwhile, my name is Victor Law. Let's head straight to the Supreme Court of Kenya for the live coverage of the big battle. Good morning.